Let's go ahead and start our project through Unity Hub. And I'm going to be selecting the 2D template here and then name it whatever you like. So now that we've opened up our new project, you might notice a few differences from the regular 3D template. So first of all, there's no directional light here, and we've only got a main camera that's present in our current scene. And also, this main camera is currently in orthographic view. Now, I'll show you the difference between orthographic and perspective later, but basically with orthographic, everything appears to be flat, so the 2D way, and in perspective view, you get a sense of depth through your camera. All right, so for our 2D project, I went ahead and found some assets that we can use. So I just searched for a 2D video game background from Google, a plain white image, and an image of our character. Now, this character image, it is a PNG file, and I've also removed its background so that we only have the character being shown in our game and not the background with it. So I'm just going to select these and then drag them into our assets folder. And that's pretty much it. Now you can use these three images on our 2D game. Let's start by setting up the scene. So I'm just going to drag this background image into our main scene. And I'm going to resize it so that it fits the scene and the whole camera better. Okay, so I'm just scaling it up like this. Now we will need a platform that our character can walk on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this white image into our scene. And as I'm moving this white image, you'll notice that it's moving behind the background image. Now to fix that, there's a very simple fix we can do. We'll just select the background image. And here in additional settings, you'll see a setting called order in layer. Now, the lower this value, the further behind the image will be. So I'm just going to set this to something like -5 for now. And if we select our white image, it is 0. So it will be appearing in front of the background image. Now, if I drag this over now, you'll see that it is indeed in front of the background image. Now, I'm just going to resize this so that it appears like a platform. All right, so now the plain white looks a bit odd with our background, so let's try to make it look a little better. I'm going to select the white image and I'm going to add a color to it. So the color I'm going to use is I'm going to use the dropper and I'm going to select this dark green color here. Okay, and then I'm just going to make it a little bit darker. All right, that looks better. Let me just move it up a little bit. And that is it. That's our nice little platform for our video game. All right, now let's add our character to the game. I'm just going to drag him in and I'm going to resize him. That seems like a reasonable size. And now let's try running our game and let's see what happens. So as you expected, nothing happens. So let's go back and let's try to add some box colliders and some physics to our game. So I'm just going to select the platform. And first of all, let's rename our game object so that we know what's what. I'm going to select the background here. I'm going to rename it to background. I'm going to select the platform. I'm going to rename it to platform. I'm going to select our character's image and I'm going to rename him to player. Okay, now we will want a box collider on our platform. So I've selected our platform here and you'll see that there isn't a box collider already. But also, you need to make sure that we add a 2D box collider. So I'm going to search for box collider And you'll see there are two options you can choose from. You can either do a regular box collider or a box collider 2D. So I'm going to select the box collider 2D, and now you'll see this green outline around our image, and that means that's where the box collider is going to be effective. So it's going to be colliding in this outline. Okay, so that is it. You don't need to change any of these other settings. We have added a box collider to the platform, and I'm also going to do the same to the player. So I'm going to add component box collider 2D. Okay, I've added a box collider 2D to the platform and the player. Now, if I run the game now, still nothing happens. Well, the reason behind that is because we haven't added physics. So I'm going to go ahead and add a rigid body 2D to our player. I'm going to search for rigid body, and you'll see again there are two options, rigid body and rigid body 2D. So I'm going to select rigid body 2D, and here it is. Now here you can also change the gravity scale for 2D rigid bodies. So let's test it out now. Let me try running the game. And as you can see, our character or player falls onto the platform. If you look at the character underneath him, there's a gap between the image and the platform image. Now, the reason why this is because you need to adjust the outline for the box collider. So if we just select our player and we head over to where the box collider is, if you click on this Edit Collider tool here, you can edit the outline of the box collider. So let's try to make it a little closer to our player. We would want this part of him to collide. And if I just zoom in a little bit, we can finally adjust this. And yeah, that is a reasonable box collider for now. And that is it. So now that is adjusted. Let's try running the game again. I'll just bring him up a little bit. And now you can see there's no gap between the platform and the player when he falls onto it. The next thing we want to do now is add some 2D movement, but this time we'll be using player input. So I'm going to be showing you how you can add movement with input through scripting. So we're going to head over to our player and we're going to add component, new script, and we're going to name this player movement. All right, so there's now a player movement script here, and it's also added to our character. I'm going to double click on this so it opens up in Visual Studio Community. All right, so this is a new script that we've opened up in Visual Studio Community. For movement, we're going to start by creating a variable for the movement speed. So again, I'm going to create a public variable for movement speed, public of type float. I'm going to name it movement speed. And I'm going to set the value to 5. Okay. And now because we want to get input, we're also going to be creating another float variable, and we're just going to name it horizontal input. So public, or actually for this one, we won't be referring to it outside of the script. So we'll just call it float. So it isn't set to public, and we just start with float, and then we're going to name it horizontal move. Okay, and we're not going to set its value to anything. We're just going to initialize it like this. For movement and physics related things in your game, it is always better to do it through the rigid body of the game object that you're trying to move or do something physically with it. So this time, instead of directly manipulating the transform of the game object itself, we're going to be using the rigid body of the game object. So to do that, we're going to first create a variable for the rigid body. So public of type rigid body 2D, and we're just going to name it RB, short for rigid body. And don't forget the semicolon. Now this variable that we've created here, it isn't automatically linked to the rigid body that's on our player. To link it, what we have to do is, if I just save this script and head back to Unity now, and I select our player and head over to where our script is, you'll see that the public variables have shown up. So the movement speed is here. I can change its value directly through Unity. And there's this RB variable as well, but it says none, which means it isn't linked to anything. So what we're going to do is just simply drag this rigid body 2D over to this part of RB that says none. And now, as you can see, it is linked to this player's rigid body. So I'm just going to save this and head back to our Visual Studio. Okay, so now it is linked to our player's rigid body, and we want to add movement to it. So the first thing you want to do is receive input. So Unity makes it very simple for you to add input in your game. All you have to do is we're going to get values for the horizontal move variable that we initialized here. So I'm going to refer to it. I'm going to say horizontal move, and it's going to be equal to input dot get axis, and then open parentheses. So now you're gonna type in the name of the axis that you want to get input for, and this needs to be in quotation marks. And the spelling is important here, so make sure it's exactly like this. And that is it. So this line of code here is going to be responsible for receiving input, and you don't need to assign any keys. Unity automatically assigns the horizontal axis keys to the A and D keys on our keyboard. And you can of course read up on how this all works on the Unity documentation. You can get more details about how you can change the assignment of the get axis, or the different axes that you can get, and the different ways you can use this input component, the input class. Make sure you always read the documentation, because your game might not be a simple game project like this, and you would want to do more advanced stuff. So the Unity documentation is a great place to get information from. So let's move on from that. And now that we are getting input, and again, this line of code is within the update function. This is very important because we would want to receive input every frame. So continuously, we want to check for input. Now in the next line, we're going to be adding movements in a similar way that we did for our previous game project. But this time, we're going to be referring to the rigid body. So referring to the rigid body variable that we created here, I'm going to type in rb.transform.position will again equal to rb.transform.position plus new vector3, similar to what we did last time, and we only want to move it in the x-axis. So the movement that we're going to add is going to be our movement speed times horizontal move times time dot delta time. Okay, and then 0 for the y, 0 for the z, and then finish the line with a semicolon. Now you might be wondering why we're multiplying by the horizontal move, this variable here that's responsible for input. Well, the way input works is when there isn't any input, this value of horizontal move is 0. So basically, when there's no input, this whole thing is also going to be 0, because movement speed multiplied by 0 would be 0. So our character won't move. But once you do press a key for horizontal movement, this value becomes 1. So then it would be our movement speed multiplied by 1, which is 5. And it would add a movement of 5 float in the x-axis. So that is how this logic is going to work. Now let's save this script and head back to Unity. And let's try running our game. Alright, so our character falls down, collides with the platform. And now, as I press the D and the A keys, he is indeed moving based on my input. So that was it for this video, guys. We have a lot more resources on our website. We're going to be sharing links to other useful videos that you can use. Also, we're going to be including information about how you can get your assets that you can use in your game if you can't make your own assets. So please check that out. The Unity Asset Store is also a great option. They have a lot of free assets available, both 2D and 3D assets. So please check those out and check our website for more information. And also, please, if you have any other problems, if you have any problems that you're facing with your projects, please try to email us through the contact section on our website. Thank you.